Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing great. Thank you all so much for being here this morning. It's so wicked to have you here. I can already see the comments coming through. I can see that there was probably some feedback in that music video. Sorry for that, but let's get going nonetheless. And we've got a hell of a session for you this morning. The vibes have been great already from just the chat before we went live. So I'm so excited to get you all get going today. I can already see the chat messages coming through. Please do switch your messages to everyone so everyone can see your messages, and also drop in where you're watching from. I saw Montserrat has already dropped in that they're watching from Madrid and it's sunny. So yes, we're all very jealous. And yes, Claire, Annie is excited too in the background there. Today we have 4 guests to introduce, so I'm going to make this quick. But if I could make a challenge to everyone watching today, it will be to keep that chat feature buzzing throughout today's session, as it is right now. It will be so wicked to just see that chat feature coming through. Thank you, Jane, for accepting that challenge. I hope the rest of you do too. Hopefully, you all know by now that today is all about mentorship, and we're speaking about this because of one of our panelists today, Annabel Venner. When Annabel last spoke with the Marketing Meetup, she spoke about her passion for mentorship, and immediately the chat feature went crazy with people wanting to find out more. I was then subsequently messaged for days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks about people wanting to know more about mentorship. So we thought we'd dedicate a whole session to it. And we thought we'd dedicate a session to it in the company of some wonderful people, not just the people watching this morning. So we've got Kat, who is an absolute mentorship expert, by the way, dialing in from Kenya, but also 4 wonderful panelists. Each are experienced either on the side of being a mentor or a mentee, or indeed both. So I really hope that we can provide a really useful, practical session for you today. To speak about each briefly, you may already know Sherilyn Shackell. She spoke before at the Marketing Meetup about what's the effing point. It was a slightly less PG version than effing, but you get that. Sherilyn runs the incredible Marketing Academy. Each of us, Annabel, George, Maddie, and I, have all been part of the Marketing Academy in one way. It's an unbelievable program, and nominations are open right now for EMEA as well. So, take that opportunity and get yourself nominated for the Marketing Academy this year, if you're not already, because you really should. It's amazing, and so is Sherilyn. Secondly, Annabel Venner. Again, we sort of said it's kind of her fault that we're here today, but in a very positive way. Annabel is the former CMO of Hiscox and today the president of the Marketing Society. She's a fellow dog lover. She's accomplished. She's giving. She's kind, and she's just amazing. Third, we have George Liso Thole. George was one of my fellow scholars on the 2020 cohort of the Marketing Academy, and someone who I just loved spending time with. He's the founder of All Ears, a company that helps create a new visual culture that is more representative of the diverse local and global communities that your brand serves. It's a really important task, and if there's one person who I know would absolutely nail it, it's George. It's wicked. And finally, we've got Maddie Allen, head of Axiom Europe. Maddie is, again, kind, incisive, and a complete absolute leader. She's had experience both from a mentorship and a menteeship capacity. And personally, I'd be very jealous of anyone who gets the chance to work with her. She's wicked. I absolutely love her. I think she's brilliant. You get to find out more about each of our panelists as we go through today. But before we get going, I've got 2 last things. The first is to ask for you to get your questions in. Today's session will be more valuable if we answer some basic questions, we get through the practicalities, but then you get your specific questions in so we can help you with the questions that you have. So the way you're going to do that is you wiggle your mouse and you find the Q&A feature, which is found down below. Pop your questions in there. We'd absolutely love to answer them. So please do get your questions in. This session is so important, and it's exactly for you. The second thing is to say a big thank you for today's sponsors. Today's featured sponsor is Gravity Global. They're a digital agency, consultancy based out of London and Norwich. The story with Gravity Global is that I actually met their founder on my stag do and hit it off, and since then they came in and ended up sponsoring the marketing meetup. They're wonderful people and have been sponsoring the marketing meetup for like the past 4 or 5 years. I'll link them afterwards in today's follow-up email. Please do take time to thank Lou, who is the person who represents Gravity Global there. Just say thank you for supporting the marketing meetup. It's why we're able to do what we do. Also, a big thank you to Geosk, Impression, Content Cal, Pitch, Fiverr, Redgate, Cambridge Marketing College, Brand Recruitment, and Third Light. Each of them will have a featured slot over the course of time, and you'll get the time to find out a little bit more about them. So that's my introduction done. That's 4 introductions done. So let's get on with the session. And the first question is for Sherilyn. And Sherilyn, I'd be interested, how do you define mentorship, and what does it mean to you?
Right. So I would define it as a gift, actually. I think mentoring is an absolute gift. And there are loads of different definitions of what it is, and people have got their own ideas as to what it is. Very often confused with coaching, and it's completely the flip opposite of coaching. In the classic sense, and the Marketing Academy, actually, our mentoring element isn't run in the classic sense. In the classic sense, it's quite a deep and meaningful relationship that's built over time. And a mentor, a great mentor, will be kind of part teacher, part guide, part guru. And the relationship will continue. So you would meet mentors, more than once and build up a relationship over time. It doesn't have to be that. So mentoring is defined within the Academy slightly different. So we've got 250 mentors around the world, and they are all C-suite or subject matter experts. And we arrange just under 1,000 mentoring sessions a year around the world. But our scholars and our fellows are the CMO level. We've got a fellowship program exclusively for CMOs, and there's mentoring in that as well. They only meet a mentor once, but they meet between 4 and 8 of them. And they meet for maybe an hour, maybe 90 minutes. So it's a very, very deep dive and a share of information. And what mentoring should be within that context is actually quite a lot about the mentor, not so much about the mentee. So where coaching is all about the coachee, so a fantastic executive coach will enable you to find your own solutions, carve your own path, come up with your own ideas. A really good mentor will give you the benefit of their experience by imparting advice about what they might do if they were in your situation. They're not necessarily telling you what to do, but they are sharing some of the things they've done, mistakes they've made, or things that went brilliantly, so that you can have the benefit, the amplification, if you like, of their experience. And that's what mentoring is for us anyway, is a forum whereby somebody that is experienced in a different area, doesn't have to be older, a mentor doesn't even have to be more experienced than you are, older, with more work experience at all. They just need to be experts in something that maybe you're not. And they've got to be uber generous in terms of gifting you their time and their knowledge. So, a great mentor will make it about them and their experiences. A great coach will make it about you.
I love that. Thank you, Sherilyn. I think that's really, really important to point out, that sort of generosity and that sort of depth of relationship as well. I think that's certainly something that spoke true to my experiences of it. George, I'm probably going to pick on you first. I mean, why does it feel important to you? I know that this is something that's close to your heart. Why does mentorship feel important?
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having us here. This is a really great topic. I think we've all been, as you mentioned at the top of the call, that we've all been a part of an amazing program called the Marketing Academy that Sherilyn runs, and highly recommend it. I think mentorship has been particularly important to me, both in my personal life and my business life. And I think, I've had incredible mentors throughout my career that have shared a lot of their experiences, and the ones that have been more memorable to me have been about shared experiences. I think when I look at mentorship, particularly through the prism of myself, who I am as a person of color, it's important to have people help guide you, and people that have had the similar experiences with you. That kind of knowledge helps people like myself, women, overcome a lot of challenges within our industry. So it's been really, really valuable for someone like myself. And I recognize that even in the work that we do around inclusion, that the idea that somebody recognizes something in you or is interested in you is so, so important. And it goes back to the concept of social capital, and using that social capital to open doors for others is so important. So I'm thankful for the mentors I've had in my life, because they've really influenced the trajectory of my career and even the business that I have today.
That's awesome, man. And I love that. And I think it speaks to something that both you and Sherilyn have now sort of spoken about, which is also about generosity.
Yes.
There's something about the mentor sort of being generous with their experiences and advice to help the sort of the person come through, right?
Exactly. So important.
I love that. Annabel, let's give folks an opportunity to meet everyone. So Annabel, why is mentorship important to you?
I think it's because everybody in their career journey, no matter how successful they may be, will have had challenges at some time. And it could be in terms of just not feeling that they're able to influence, or they're trying to go for a promotion. And I just think having a mentor there who you can ask questions of, and you can find out what they may have done in a similar situation, or when they face challenges, and get advice from them in terms of how they approached it. And I think sometimes having somebody you can talk to that isn't currently at where you work, or isn't somebody you can often have a more honest conversation. Mm-hmm. And often people can open up a lot more, because it's just easier sometimes doing it with somebody who's a bit more far removed. And I think from a sort of mentor point of view, it's really, really rewarding when you see somebody you have given some time to succeed in their career. So I did a lot of it when I was at Hiscox, particularly with junior women. But there's been a couple of occasions in the past month when I know that my advice has helped somebody. It helped somebody the other day get a job, which was fantastic. And it helped somebody the other day who's trying to get a change in career. And it's so rewarding from a personal point of view.
I love that. I think, so we're launching a mentorship matching service, and like the conversations that we've been having in-house, like how do we get mentors? Because the mentee sort of side of things is quite clear. Folks would love a mentor, but I think that generosity and that reward, that you've just spoken about, Annabel, is so spot on. I think we can hopefully all relate to a feeling of helping someone and then seeing them come through, and that little bit of a buzz that you get when they succeed. That's so awesome. And how about you, Maddie? I mean, you've sat on both sides of these, the mentorship and mentorship, menteeship. Why is it important to you?
Yeah, I have, but I have to say, doing the Marketing Academy really massively helped change my understanding, to your point, Sherilyn, of what is mentoring. And I think I had probably, I believe now, like a lot of people, but I kind of would pick somebody or lean towards somebody who I just thought was amazing and be like, could I have a mentoring session with you? And then book some time in and just turn up and be like, teach me. Teach me everything, like I just want to know, like you're so brilliant, and share kind of thing. And Sherilyn, it's part of the academy, and you really teach, this is people's time, it's important, it's 90 minutes with them, so share your goals, you need to craft, and you need to think, what is it that maybe they could help you with? And the scary thing is you don't know that person, so you don't really know what they can help you with. So for me, kind of one of the biggest practices was being prepared. And I think actually that's taken me into even having mentoring sessions with people that I do know, is, you know, being prepared, like go and have a look at what are they writing about on LinkedIn, or what are they talking about, or if I do know them, maybe have a chat to them in advance, just what's on their mind or what are they doing. So I think that preparedness, but also to share, to think about what is going on in your life or in your workplace. What is it that you do want help with, and be clear and be specific and share options, because the mentor then has something that they can link into to go, I could help you with that bit. I probably can't help you with that bit, kind of, or actually maybe I could learn from you and ask questions and we could bounce it off together. This bit I really have got experience in and can lean into. And I think that preparedness of both the person, but also the goals, and being sharing and being really open and honest about what you're struggling with, you know, whether it's a person or it's how to do something, and just being able to share that with someone openly. And the last bit for me was also about being open-minded as to what you're going to get back. You know, I think somebody's placed into the questions or the chat was about, what do you do when it's not quite working? You know, you're not always going to get that immediate connection with somebody, and that's okay. And I think actually, again, as part of the Marketing Academy, what was great is I asked sometimes and shared the same challenges with different people. And what was lovely is to get the different experiences or answers or advice that I would get, and to go, oh, actually, I think you think when you go to a mentor, like a parent or a teacher, you think they've got they have the answer. Yeah. And they don't. They're sharing their experience, their advice, you know, based on what happened to them or how they would do it, how they approach things. That's not necessarily, it's not the right answer, it's their advice, their opinion, like you said, Sherilyn. So ask lots of, you know, have that difference of a mentor from different people, take the same challenge, get different opinions and craft your own, but therefore be really open-minded, be thankful and grateful because they are taking the time to share their experience or their advice and their thoughts. So that open-mindedness as well was great. And I think all of those things can be applied in reverse. So whether that is whether you are the mentor, that preparation on the person, the content, and then that open-mindedness, that's for me kind of almost a bit of 3 golden rules.
I love that. That's incredible. 3 golden rules. I love that. You know, but I think we've already spoken. So the next question was going to be about what a great relationship looks like. But I feel like we've already gone through quite a lot here. We've spoken about generosity, about open-mindedness, about experiences and opinions shared. You know, it's a relationship where someone probably comes with experiences that they can help another person come up with and sort of move through their career with. It's so powerful. There's a question that's come into the chat, and I usually don't take questions from the chat because they're best placed in the Q&A, but I know that it's one that Sherilyn has an opinion on, so I wanted to take it very quickly, and it comes from Andrew, and the question is, do you pay for mentorship, generally speaking?
No. Never. I am adamantly opposed to paying for mentoring. It should be freely given and gratefully received. If you're paying for advice, you're paying for consulting. Mm-hmm. So if you want that kind of advice, go and pay a consultant to come and work in, you know, your business or work on whatever issue you're dealing with. And that is a commercial transaction with accountability, with agreed outcomes. And that is so far from what mentoring should be. Like I said right at the beginning, mentoring should be a gift. It should be freely given by somebody that's driven to help develop other people. That tends to be the kind of mantra of our wonderful mentors, like Annabel, who's mentored for us for years. You know, her driver is to develop other leaders. And, you know, that's what you need in a really good mentor. I said earlier, one of the big drivers for taking the Marketing Academy to Australia is that one of our scholars had moved over there. So one of our alumni had moved over to Oz and sent me a link of a company that had just launched in Australia that was not dissimilar in structure from the Marketing Academy. And, you know, even had like 8 mentoring sessions, and it was just really similar. But the reason why she sent it to me was because they were charging for it, and they were charging shitloads of money. I was horrified. I can't express how horrified I was. And I thought, it's just not right. This cannot happen. You can't sell, human generosity. It's not a transaction that you can commoditize and put a pound or dollar sign on. And it's the real. I thought, right, if Australia needs this kind of program, to the extent that some sharks are prepared to charge this much for it, I'm taking the academy there. And so I've definitely got that view. There's a lot of very successful people that kind of promote that you can buy a mentoring session from them as this additional revenue stream that that they get going. But I'm often thinking, why don't you say it like it is? It's free. It's paid for consulting. It's just not mentoring. The relationship behaviours would be totally different if there was a financial construct behind it. Annabel, I think you agree, right?
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, I think coaching or executive coaching, whatever it's called, is different. And as you were very clear with Sherilyn, it's around getting the coach is trying to get whoever they're coaching to discover things themselves. But I definitely think mentoring should be free. I think actually there's a lot of people very willing to do it. Obviously, you have no issue, Sherilyn, probably getting people to sign up to the Marketing Academy. You've also got, obviously, Joe's launching a program. The School of Marketing and Richie run their mentoring program that's specifically targeted towards younger, earlier marketers in their career. But I just think that it definitely should be free. And I do think there's a lot of people who are prepared to give up the time to do it. And I think that it's around finding that person who's the right match for you. But also the mentee needs to drive that relationship. The mentor will be busy, will have a day job. So the mentee needs to be the one who says, can I have some time? I'm facing this challenge. It'd be really good to talk to you about it and get your advice and help on it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
another really good sort of differentiation as well. I've already said the difference between mentoring and coaching is vast. The executive coaches actually do that for a living, right? They go through years of study and accreditation to get to be a qualified coach. And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for this deep knowledge of psychology, the frameworks that they use. That's what you're paying for. And executive coaching is actually one of the best financial investments anybody can make. And we're big supporters of having that quite early on in your career, which doesn't often happen because it's quite expensive. Your company normally pays for it, and they normally pay for it once you get up to the more senior levels. But if you can get an executive coach, they are gold dust. They really are gold dust. Mentors are usually being paid by somebody else to do a job. Right? They're already being paid. So, there's just another reason why, you don't need to pay them. They do it in their own time. All of our mentors in the academy will do it on their own time. It's a personal give. It's not, we don't go to their companies and say, can we get your CMO to be a mentor? It's a personal request and it's a personal give. But, they are being paid to do their day job. Whereas executive coaches, that is their day job. And that's a big difference.
And in more, in most cases, a bit like me, I reached a point where I thought, right, I need to, I want to give back now. So how can I give back? And mentoring is one of the ways I do it. There's other things that I do, but I just think with most people, they get a massive amount of satisfaction from giving up whatever, through your program, Sherilyn, it's an hour and a half with each person. But even when you have that more long-term mentorship, there's something that drives people to do it, and they don't need paying to do it.
Spot on. No, I think that speaks to an attitude of a great mentor, isn't it? It's that sort of, again, coming back to almost what we sort of spoke about at the beginning with definitions, is that generosity, and it's about the person they're giving to, it's their focus is helping those people. Which is so spot on. Thank you for sharing the chat sort of lit up there with people going, oh my God, I agree. And Sherilyn, you nailed that question. So that's awesome. With for the benefit of the panelists, I sent through a bunch of questions yesterday. we've worked through most of them already, so like we're doing all right. There's some fantastic questions in the Q&A as well. So what I'd encourage anyone watching to do is go through the Q&A questions that are live right now and give a thumbs up to any that you like, so that we can make sure we prioritize asking those, because I can see already we're probably not going to get through every question. So let's make sure that we get through the questions that you want answering. I'm going to turn to George though, in the meantime, and ask you, how did you prepare for mentorship sessions that you've had over the course of time? And did you come in with questions about sort of personal stuff, or did you go in with business stuff? Maddie's already said about being very specific, but what did it look like for you?
Well, I think to me, that's a sort of very personal thing. Obviously, I think you should have questions that relates to the mentor in terms of their experiences and what they can offer you, what advice they can offer you, whether it's personal or business. So I think it's important to maybe have some structured questions around that to make your time useful with the mentor and have more value. But I found, in particular, through my experience with the Marketing Academy mentors, because we had a number of different mentors from very diverse industries, which is incredible. And I think that's equally important. Mentorship doesn't have to be about specifically your particular sector that you work in. There's the rich diversity of people's experiences in different sectors and how that can be applied to your life or your business is equally important and of value. So I found that the approach that worked best for me, in particular, was to ask questions about things that mattered to me. And in particular, at that time, during the Marketing Academy process, it was always around things that were around all ears and things around inclusion and belonging. Therefore, most of my conversations, and I like to have them as conversations because I like them to be to have rich human connections and much more authentic. So the conversations were generally focused around inclusion, in particular because a lot of the mentors are at C-suite level, so to have that kind of access is great, and to have that kind of knowledge. So I wanted to ask questions around what that meant to them, as in include what inclusion meant to them, either as individuals or their business, and what kind of metrics mattered. So there was a lot of questions around things that helped shape the approach of all ears, because I found that I got a lot of value from understanding, okay, well, this is what you're interested in as CEO of X, Y, and Z, or a CMO of this business. So therefore, if I'm to offer value around inclusion and belonging to your business or a similar kind of business, their responses were really valuable in shaping our approach. So I found that things that mattered to me and to the business that I'm in were the questions that were more effective in the conversations that I've had.
Mate, nailed it. Absolutely nailed that answer. That's so good. Just to pick up on a small part of your answer, there's a lovely comment that's come in from Francesca here, who says that Heineken do a reverse mentoring scheme where exactly. Members learn from younger graduates and stuff like that. It's great for innovation and staying connected. And so I just wanted to pick up on that because you sort of mentioned about it being a conversation.
Yes.
You know, and you know, we get a short amount of time with people with the Marketing Academy, but Sherilyn also mentioned a deep relationship at the beginning. And if you have the benefit of that time, then my experience with Sarah Warby, who was the CCO of Nando's, she was like, you know, I went in like, oh my God, who are you? You angel of a person. And then, you know, she came and she was like, I'm here to learn from you as well. You know, and so, mate, you absolutely nailed the answer. That's so spot on. So,
and to your point, I had a lot of that too. I mean, I found that a lot of mentors walked away saying, "My God, I've learned so much from you." So reverse mentorship, as even Sherilyn mentioned, is so important because it sparks intergenerational learning, which is of value in any company. So yeah, I think it's great.
That's spot on, mate.
It is a two-way street. That's the absolute magic and beauty of the mentoring, and that's why we get so many people want to mentor within the academy, because there is this beautiful exchange of knowledge between the generations, and ours is a little bit generational in that we do it, or hierarchical.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be, but ours is. And we are inundated with feedback from our mentors all the way through the program going, oh my God, I just learned more in that session than I've learned, within my own business for the last 6 months. And we always say to the scholars, as you know, is one of the things we teach you is that it is about give and not get. So when you're going into a mentoring session, you've obviously set it up with an expectation that mentor's going to give you stuff, right? Going to give you their knowledge, going to give you their wisdom. But you need to reframe that thinking in your head. If you really want to get some magic out of a mentor, think about what you're going to give to them. What can I give this mentor? And I cannot express how much mentors soak up the experiences of the people that they're talking to in any and every context. Very rarely do you have a CEO of a huge global organization. Like we've got 2 of the big global holding company agency CEOs. And very rarely will they have, a deep and meaningful conversation with someone buried underneath the hierarchy within their business. So when they get to spend an hour and a half with one of our scholars, for example, in the US, that's an amazing privilege for them, because they're going to hear what's going on for that younger generation, what's important to them, what's new in their world, what's their story. So that whole notion of give-get, I think, it makes for a really magical mentoring session.
I love that. There's a lot of humility in that, but also once you sort of ditch that sort of hierarchy, then a lot to be gained on both sides. Maddie, I want to come to you because you've had the benefit of both mentoring and menteeing, and it's the quintessential cliche question, but I am interested nonetheless, which is, what surprised you about the sessions that you've been in over the course of time? Was there anything that you went in with a certain set of expectations and you came out thinking something completely different?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And actually, I just did my first reverse mentor kind of session this month, which was really exciting. So I plucked up the courage and asked her, because it's a scary thing as well to kind of ask the other way and ask a junior member in our organisation to could I have a session with you? And I think they were a bit surprised, but again, did the same thing, sort of said what I wanted to get out of it or what was preying on my mind, and if they could just share their experiences, which was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I came out buzzing. And I think just to Sherilyn's point, and I saw it in one of the Q&A bits, which was, what can I do to give back? And it's like, just having the session as a mentor, you get so much out of it, so much enjoyment. It's endorphins. You always leave kind of with a buzz if you've helped somebody or you've learned something new. So just having the session is enough. Exactly to your point, Sherilyn, about pain. What surprised me, I think more so, was that balance actually of talking and listening. And I still sometimes don't get it right, and I think it's a constant learning bit, as it was, and it was a big kind of part of my experience at the academy, was trying to learn how much listening and when to share. And I think mentoring challenges you on that, because to that point, that when you are a mentor, a mentee has come and they want to learn from your experiences, but equally, as a mentor, you want to learn from them. And so whichever way round you are, you're wanting to gain from the other person. So I think it's just that balance for me has been the surprising thing, and I think to share that it's okay to not always feel like you've got it 100% right. And actually you can have another session, and equally you can ask and flip it around and say, that was nice to have a session with you. Could I actually maybe have one the other way around, and ask for that backwards again. So you can always ask for more time if you don't have it. And I think therefore it's okay to not quite get that right, but it's good to think about it in advance. What are the goals set out? And I think that surprising bit for me is that's always different. There's not a set rule on it. And so that's been one of the things I've also really enjoyed too, is kind of applying differently for each session, each person, each situation.
I love that. Thank you so much, Maddie. And let me follow up on that with another question for you, because it's also the top question in the Q&A right now, which is, you've recently, as you say, been through you've found a mentee or a mentor. So do you have any tips or thoughts on how you can go about finding the right mentor for you? What feels important there?
I'm sure Sherilyn and Annabel and George will give great more advice, but for me, the part has actually been being really clear on what I want to get out of it and what I'm looking for. I think rather than just going, could I have some mentors, that's going, well, what actually, and I think I'm doing the same to my team or challenges, to go, I can give you so many mentors. Which bits is it that you really kind of would perhaps like that, or go through their goals with them or their objectives and suggest to them areas where a mentor might be of value. And I think that's been really helpful, is be really clear on actually which are the areas which you are on your mind, or you've got challenges with, or you have got how-tos, or do pick the person and go, actually, I really admire you as a person. I'd like to have some time with you. I'd like to ask you about this or this or this part, etc. So I think for me, it's focus on the content or focus on the person, and then that will help lead you into the right direction. And ask, there's so many people around you who you could say, I'm looking for a mentor. These are my bits. Does anybody know anybody? I've seen it in the chat, and we'd probably go, know lots of people. As Annabel said, there's so many people willing to give their time. They want to give their time. They want to give back, and they enjoy it. They get so much out of it. So just ask around, and that would be one thing I would say. And to mentors, I would encourage, post in your work or places what kind of things are you really comfortable or confident about sharing about or talking about. I think that's something I don't see enough as well, and would be really nice actually from senior leads, is to go, I'd love to give mentoring sessions in these topics or areas. So if you're a mentor in a workplace, I'd say, be open about that, say you want to do it, and say which kind of things, because it might spark someone's interest to spend that time with you and discuss certain topics.
I love that. I can see Annabel wanting to jump in. Yeah. I'm going to add in an extra question for you, Annabel, which is about the ask as well. So I'd love to know about the best sort of asks that you've had, or asks, if we're being southern, about that you've had ever, because a lot of people will ask the question, will you be my mentor? But from your perspective, what are the best ones which you've seen over the course of time?
And I just wanted to follow on from what sort of Madelaine was talking about. So I think, I did some mentoring when I was at Hiscox, and the way, but also I had a team, and I would always speak to them about it. And the conversations normally were when we were talking about their development and what they needed to do. And then that was really good, because then you could identify that somebody may have been struggling with, influencing senior stakeholders or whatever. And then me as a leader could say, well, actually, I think this person would be a really good mentor for you, and I know that they do it for other people, and then help them to craft how that approach would be. So I think that go and have that honest conversation with your line manager about those areas that you want to develop, and often they will either know somebody within the business or even somebody externally to the business, and may be able to help you with that approach. The other thing is that, as I said before, there are lots of people who take part and do mentoring, whether they do it through the academy or the School of Marketing. Most people are quite transparent about when they do it. So if an easy way, and first step would be go and have a look at who already's doing it, and do a bit of background and see if they would be helpful for you. In terms of the best ask, what I normally do when I get approached is I ask people to tell me, I say to them, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you are, and what do you think a challenge, what do you want from a mentor? What particular challenges are you facing? What obstacles have you got? What do you think will be useful? A lot of time, people disappear after that. And in my view, it's a simple challenge back to people, which is just tell me how you want that first session. But what I'm looking for is people who can articulate where they want a bit of help, and then I can decide whether I'm the right person for them. And if I'm not, I can probably recommend somebody who might be able to help them.
And I've got some builds. So the first tip I would say is, don't write to a complete stranger and say, will you be my mentor? It's not gonna fly. Don't overthink it. It doesn't need to be as kind of formal as having a label, can sometimes make it. The best mentors out there are the people that you naturally, instinctively gravitate towards because you want some input and advice. So, And you'll also, I guarantee you, there are people that you already know who will be fantastic and awesome mentors to you. And they will be people more junior than you, a peer group above you, inside your organization, outside. I've often, we often say when the student is in need, the teacher will appear. You're likely to know them. So work out what it is. The two things to work out so that you can identify what areas you need mentors. You need to work out your strengths, and you need to work out the areas that you want to build on. We're very strengths build orientated in the Marketing Academy, right? So we like to help you make your spikes spikier. So if you're really good at something, be exceptional at that thing. So if you're really good at stuff, but you like to build even more on it, get some people that are already good at that stuff. But do work out where your build areas are, and it might be chunks of knowledge or experience that you're missing. If you know that you're absolutely shit at the commercials, and you could really, really do with some finance input, and frankly, many marketers need that. There's nothing wrong with you just whipping an email to even the CFO in your own organization, or the finance department in your own organization, or a CFO that you just find from random, and saying, look, I'm brilliant at marketing. I know I need to be a bit better at finance. How about you and I spend an hour together? Because I can give you some input about marketing, and you can give me some input about finance. And you've immediately created an opportunity for mentoring, but without a label. If you think about the label, you'd be just paralyzed. You won't know how to articulate an email. You'll be worried about, will they be too busy? Will they say no? All of that negative self shit that we tell ourselves, none of which is true. If you approach the right people and they have generosity of spirit, well, very rarely will you get turned down. They may not have much time, but people want to give. They're not assholes. They want to support and they want to give. So a nice, polite input where there is a little bit of give, get, a little bit of, I feel I could offer you something around this. I'm an expert in digital marketing. You're awesome at brand. How about we just grab a half an hour over a coffee in a Zoom chat just to exchange some ideas? That's all it need be. So don't overthink it.
I love that. I think so. Matt McKee, who's the global head of marketing for the Olympic Games, and came and spoke with us the other day, and he said something very similar to that effect there, Sherilyn, which was he, over the course of his career, has identified informal mentors. It is just people he seeks for advice or admires and sort of looks to shadow or emulate their behaviours. But you're right. I mean, the topic of today is mentorship, but it doesn't mean that you have to have that label. Thank you for articulating that, because I think that's really, really important. And by the way, I think it's interesting. So you, throughout the course of that answer, you've answered one of the top questions in the Q&A, which is identifying the value you can give back. But then also looping in the chat here where people are speaking about sort of imposter syndrome. I think it's okay to sort of, well, there's a couple of things, but I think the first is that most importantly, you do have things to give back. So for example, my accountant, exactly in the example that Sherilyn gave, can give back a phenomenal amount to me, as a marketer, because I know absolutely nothing about finance. So they could have invested a week in it, and all of a sudden they're more of an expert than me. So it's okay to sort of realize that you're actually all right at something and you can give back. And it doesn't matter if you don't have the fancy job title or whatever it may be. If you're a person with that generosity of spirit and have taken some of your time to invest in it, then you've got something to offer to give back to that person.
And fuck imposter syndrome. Just stop it. It's like it's a self-diagnosed disease that only you have, and it's in your head, and nobody else has it, and you created it in the first place. And here's a real piece of insight. I very rarely meet a leader at any level, right the way up to the most senior mentor that we've got, who doesn't experience some imposter syndrome at some point, who doesn't wake up at 3 a.m. thinking, holy shit, I'm going to get caught out, I should never be in this job. And also mentors are just as I can't find the word, it's not nervous, but it's a big deal for a mentor to spend time with you too. They're also thinking, oh my God, have I really got something to offer? I've spoken to CMOs or CEOs that have never been asked to be mentors before, and they've gone, really? Do you think people would want to spend time with me? And I go, oh, for Christ's sakes, Yes. So they're also thinking, have I got something to give? Am I going to make this work? Am I adding value? Are they able to do something with this? So, you can relax about that whole, I'm too scared to ask somebody senior because I don't know what they'll think or what they'll feel. Because, we're all human beings. And in any human being transactional relationship, there's emotion and feelings on both sides. But we're just humans sitting in a room and sharing our shit. That's what it's about.
I love that so much.
I also think, it's a lot of us can benefit from mentorship, and I think a lot of us want mentorship, but we just don't know where to begin or to look. And I think that's the challenge a lot of people have. I think I even see some of that in the comments. And I think it's important that, particularly in organizations, that they understand the benefits of mentorship and have that as part of their work culture, almost in a mandatory way, if possible, because we know that I have a tagline that mentorship unlocks inclusion, and I think it's so important within a work culture to people, regardless of who you are, man, woman, etc., to help celebrate your individuality. And I think mentorship is a vehicle for that. And I think it's important that it becomes part of work culture, because I think everybody can benefit, but just most people don't know where to start.
Spot on, absolutely spot on, mate. And actually, speaking of inclusion, then the top question here for you, George, I'm asking you, for your expertise here as well. It's a question from Erica, who asks, when are you too old for mentorship? I'm at such a crossroads in my career, I don't know in which direction to focus my efforts, and I feel like I need help too. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's you're never too old. I think it goes back to the whole concept of, and I like to say at the halftime of my career in this process, and I'm still learning, and I've learned so much from the mentors that I've had, because I've been able, speaking for myself, I've been able to progress through the creative and marketing industry for close to over 15 years. But now as I moved into the next phase of my career, where I started my own business and entrepreneurship, I found mentorship even more valuable than I ever have. I couldn't even explain it to you. It's that important to, it's been that important to me at this stage of my career. So I think absolutely, you're never too old. In fact, I think, like we said, as you get older, the wiser you get, the more you're eager to learn. And I think, learning from others and through their experiences is so important. So there's no such thing, in other words.
I love that. Thank you, mate. And I think it speaks to what Sherilyn was speaking about earlier as well, which was, if you're answering the questions to yourself about strengths and weaknesses, and you're able to know what they are before you head into these conversations, then you're able to get so much more. And maybe I'm projecting my own personal experience here, but as I've got older, I've got to know myself better, and therefore I'm able to answer those questions better too. Spot on. Absolutely. Thank you for that, mate. So we've got a question from Peter. I think I'm going to go for Annabel, if that's okay. And Peter asks, how much time do you devote to being a mentor per week, and how much time would you expect from your mentors? So about timing and what you put into the relationship.
So I've just said so for me, I there's not an hourly amount of time I put in on a weekly basis. So as I said, I do it in a number of ways. So I do the one-off sessions that I do through the Marketing Academy for Sherilyn, and those are an hour and a half, but I only do those once with the individual, unless I always say at the end of it, if they want to talk to me again or follow up, I'm very happy to do that. And then the School of Marketing again was the one-off. The rest of them, where I have more long-term relationships, I let the mentee drive it. So I don't book in a regular slot. That wouldn't work. Personally, I don't think that would work for me, and wouldn't work for them. So I let that individual contact me, because often we'll have a session. It might be focused on a particular challenge or issue that they're facing, and we'll talk through, and I'll give my experience and may give some advice at the end or recommendations for things that they could try. And then I leave it for them to contact me. It may be a month, it may be a couple of weeks. And then we may have a half an hour check-in or an hour check-in. So Unless I was a sort of a professional mentor, which I'm not, and I'm certainly not a qualified coach, there's not a certain amount of time that I give to it. And I think it's up to you, if you're doing mentorship, it's up to you to do what works for you and that you can fit in your diary. Because when you're doing your session, you shouldn't be distracted by other things. You need to give that person your full on time during the time you've got with them.
I love that. I feel like I should trademark this phrase at the moment, but it's like, whenever I speak to people about this sort of stuff, and it's been on a range of topics over the marketing meetup, there's almost this relaxed shoulders moment, where you kind of just remove the sort of the big thing, the worry about, in this case, mentorship and putting this big label on it, and just sort of saying, exactly as you just described there, Annabel, get in touch when you need some help, some advice. I'm here for you and I want to help, but equally, let's not stick something in the calendar every 2 weeks. And I know that I've experienced it a couple of times and learned from that experience, which is if you do have something scheduled in and you suddenly like, I don't have anything meaty for today's session, then it actually causes more anxiety. So, if you've got someone on the back burner where you're like, what, it's okay if I get in touch, that's great. That's really, really useful. So thank you for sharing that. I think hopefully that sort of relaxed a lot of people. Sort of think, it doesn't have to be as formal as we make out. There is a question that you touched upon earlier, Maddie, and it's been asked again in the chat, and it's also in the Q&A. So I think we'll just devote an actual question to it, which is about what happens if a mentorship relationship starts going wrong. And with everything that we've said so far, I think there's a lot of people can sort of say it's kind of okay. But I just wondered if you had any build on that sort of, what happens if things don't turn out quite as you want them to?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I think personally, I like the idea that it isn't a regular session that you have with someone. I think just based on the, the feedback you gave, George and Annabel, I think it should be purposeful. It is a kind of raising your hand, asking for help, whether it's formal or informal. Can you help me? Can you give me some advice? It is purposeful. So I think seeing mentoring as kind of a every other week, let's check in. And actually, if it isn't going right, you've got to kind of cancel that or close it down. It's harder to do. Whereas I think if you've got purpose, you can easily kind of share that either you've gained your purpose and just say thank you and walk away. So I think actually setting it up right in the first place allows you to break that easily when it's not working and not come back. Equally, I think as a mentor, please don't be offended if somebody doesn't come back to you. They may have gained all they wanted to gain from it. It might just be one session. So I think never take offense if somebody just takes. I've had lots of just single ones and it was just amazing and I just loved it and I felt I didn't need any more from that moment. So I think just making it informal actually in terms of that time duration and not having kind of a fixed relationship means you then don't actually have anything to kind of break or walk away from. Is my experience. If anybody else wants to chip in.
No, I love that. I mean, Sherilyn, I did see you sort of recoil in semi-laughter there at the question. Do you have anything to add? I mean, Maddie gave a pretty perfect answer there, but out of curiosity.
She did give a pretty perfect answer. Don't worry if the chemistry doesn't work. We say that to our scholars. There's going to be, complete love matches. Right, where the chemistry is so strong, where the alignment on values or ethics or whatever is so strong that those two people are going to want to stay in touch for the rest of their lives. And we've got many, many, many examples of where a scholar and a mentor has continued the relationship for years and years and years, because that's just a little bit of magic that happened in that situation. And had they met in any other kind of context, the same dynamic would have happened. But that's not what you're looking for. That's a fabulous accidental result if it does happen. You're not looking for, a deep and meaningful relationship so that you're joined at the hip for the rest of your life. You're seeking something in that moment at that time. You're seeking a little bit of input or advice, or you're giving a little bit of input advice. It doesn't have to be this fantastic chemistry thing. And I've learned more from people that I didn't like than sometimes than people I did. You know, you don't even have to like them. It's nicer if the conversation is easier and it flows, but you know, you can learn just as much from somebody who doesn't think like you, who doesn't act like you, who doesn't have similar beliefs to you, doesn't have similar values to you. You know, I've had deep and meaningful conversations with people I would never invite round to my house, but I've learned something out of that situation, and that's what mentoring is, really.
I love that. And it certainly speaks true to my experience of it, which is that, you know, you can have these long conversations, but often it's only a sentence that will change things, you know. And certainly that was my experience with Martin George from Waitrose, who's just a lovely human being, but like we had a great chat for 89 minutes, and then there was like 1 minute which was just like pure gold, and it changed my trajectory forever. And we've had maybe 2 or 3 conversations since, but like they've been very informal, but that one thing, that one moment was enough. And that's okay, you know. So again, you know, just to sort of relieve that pressure from the whole situation, and sort of say, you know, it's okay, get what you need from the situation, and that's good. I feel like we've covered quite a lot of the questions in a roundabout way, whether it's answering directly or sort of getting answers throughout the course of the other answers. So I'm feeling pretty pleased about today. So I just want to say thank you all so much for taking the time and offering your answers, your advice, your experience. I mean, this has been, in a sense, group mentorship in a way. You know, hopefully folks have come away with what they need to. Certainly in the chat messages here. We've got some lovely comments coming through. So I hope that every one of you can take that and know that you've helped a bunch of people today. So thank you to the panel. Thank you to everyone watching in today. You know, really, really good session. A great way to kick off season 5. We are launching our mentorship matching service very soon. We'll be launching it into beta. So like we'll be putting together like our 15 sort of best matches, so to speak. I'll share information on that later in the week, so do watch out for those emails about that. In the meantime, please do take the time to thank the sponsors. That means an awful lot to me and means that we can keep bringing these sessions to you. Thank you, Sherilyn, George, Annabel and Maddie for being here today, and I hope you have a lovely Tuesday.